Hello, everybody, and Merry Christmas or Happy Holiday. If you don't believe in Christmas, well, most of us do not, right? It's a child story. And when you grow up, probably at the age of 8 or 9, you started to doubt it. Then you become mature eventually. All right, okay, that's a story. Anyway, okay, today I'm going to talk about the absolutely absolute. And what is that, you may ask? Good question. I put a short essay, I may say, to the web, and nobody ever discussed with me. Well, actually, I cannot say nobody because in the forum there's somebody who responded. But other than that, uh, in the forum, in the what's it called? The the longer one, the longer article, nobody responded, but the creator's editor put it there for people to see. So I got a lot of viewings, and but nobody clicked either good or something, or make a comment or something. That is a pretty unusual for my uh, words. Normally I put it there and somebody will respond. Well, in a way, I understand what is going on here. And this is actually the most difficult part in my theories. Hopefully, it's not drying, boring, and but also it's entertaining. I hope intellectually. So today's a holiday. If you have nothing else to do, think about that. You may feel entertained as well as enlightened in a way. I hope. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Okay, let's come to the topic now. And what is the absolutely absolute? Okay, some background first. As humans, we are and are supposed to be. What is humans? And yesterday somebody mentioned to me, oh, I got it. Humans are made of three parts. Can I say that? The animal part, the human part, and the God part. Well, I said good summary, but let me put it this way. Human side is what we are, so you cannot include this one in your definition. You have to say either the animal part or the God part. That's my comment, and think about this. Whatever the animal does, we as a human does too, right? Think about that. A pig, for example, Mr. Wang, for example, Mr. Wang needs to eat, and so does a pig. Mr. Wang needs to have children, so does a pig. Mr. Wang needs to have a house, so does the pig. The pig has a pig stall, right? So, and Mr. Wang maybe need fancy clothes, and the pigs has furs, and humans we know used to go furs, and no need for clothing, and we can eventually they got some leaves to put on it on the body and to decorate to or to protect from the cold outside, right? That's called evolution. And you go that way gradually for thousands of tens of thousands of years, and you eventually have clothing. So it's not important. Okay, how about the abstract part? Language wise, all right? Does human have the language for fun or for whatever purpose? But we know animals do have a language. right? And let's say bees will communicate by flying around, like the shape of the letter 8 or the number 8, something like that. I remember. And a lot of actually animals have the intelligence equal to a few years old child. That we have enough scientific evidence to show that. So no doubt about it. All right, so what's a human special for? Then comes the question. Well, human can do good to other people, much, much more good, right? They can be kind, they appreciate the beauty, and they seek truth. That's the three things animals don't do, right? So that's the God part, actually. So to come to be a true human, you have to think your God part to separate this part from the part of being an animal. Like you accumulate a lot of food, and you make the trophy, the trough, I mean, not trophy, trough of the pig, pile up as high as sky. And what's the use of that? Tell me. That's called useful, right? And you got a lot of money. That's a trough, right? A deep trough is still a trough. That's for sure, right? So the important part for humans to be like a god. Actually, it's part of God. I'll tell you later about this part. To appreciate beauty, to show you kindness, that is to do good. And last one, but not least, actually, most importantly, to know the truth. Before you know it, you have to search for it. And to discover it, then you can understand it. So that is the topic I'm going to do today. All right, this is the background. So for this enlightenment, actually Aristotle in ancient Greece had already concluded man wants to know. Of course, here man, he means both female and male. So don't take it sexually, right? He is not sort of male-oriented. It's not exactly. At that time, probably males do more things than females. But the important thing is, when he used the word man, he basically he represents everybody, both male and female. Okay. That being said, so what to know then? A human might ask, what's the fundamental thing about the truth we want to know? Okay, let me start from this. And first, what is a fact? You may respond, this is so easy. Everybody knows what fact is. Well, wait a minute. Not everybody, probably. In my study, I found out that the Chinese culture does not distinguish the object from the subject, the facts from the thinking. In Chinese culture, although they claim they have 5,000 years of culture, in their thoughts, in their sense thoughts, they have a lot of saints in China, right? Like Confucius, Mencius, Lao Tzu, whoever. They are thinkers, but they never specially or particularly distinguish the objects, not in your mind, from what you are thinking. They never did that thing. If you don't believe me, you can look. In other words, they never have the analysis, the separation of the fact from their thinking. On the other hand, they always believe if I'm the God, or not God, they don't have the concept of God, if I'm the number one, like an emperor or something, Or if I'm even the high official, you are under me. Whatever I say must be true. Also, they use that one as a way of telling people what to do. That's what Chinese people think. You know, the famous proverb, pointing a deer, saying it's a horse to test officials, 指鹿为马, right? And everyone knows that story. That kind of behavior even lasted to today. So in their history, there's no this epistemological stage called to separate facts from fiction, to separate facts from what they think it is. That's a big disadvantage. That's why their culture hasn't so far developed the analytical thinking as in the West. That's a big difference. So this is pretty important. What is a fact? And even today in China, they don't think that way. Well, if there's let's say a case, there's some argument, they will say, they won't ask you what is a fact or can you prove it? All those things are not important to the Chinese, especially to the authorities. You know, authorities were to influence the masses, right? The common people. What they think, the masses will follow, right? If there's a big controversy about the case, if the authority says this way, let's go this way. Probably the majority will follow them. That's in China. And no matter what it is a fact or not, or it's a fiction or not, they don't care, right? If authorities say you are wrong, then you are wrong. They will sentence you that way. That's what happened in China. Okay, let's leave that part, and I come to the fact part. So, fact is by definition something outside yourself. It doesn't go the way you think what you think. Let's say there's a moon there, right? You think the moon has a rabbit, has a sort of a goddess there, living there. Well, now you have a Chinese spaceship going there, right? Did you see it? You didn't. That's a fact. But you still can think there is something, some monsters there, or any creatures there. But that's not a fact, all right? The fact won't change. The moon will go, stays there, and does what it is supposed to, follow its own natural course. So there's nothing you can do about it. Just on your thinking. You cannot twist the facts. Okay. That being said, let's come to the next part. All right. So what first is a fact, and then secondly, let's talk about the truth. What is the truth? My definition is like this: truth is a law, or the internal mechanism represented normally by mathematics, by the way of what mathematics using symbols to reflect. For example, the Newton's gravity law, right? The wave theory and Einstein's relativity. The energy equals matter times speed of light doubled or times again. All right? So that is a law. That is called the truth. Let's say this way, normally. But I want to point out this fact. When we say natural law is the truth. We mean it is the truth on certain conditions. Without those conditions, that is to say, they are not truth anymore. For example, a few examples I just gave, either Newtonian physics or Einstein theory or even quantum mechanics. They have laws. They are expressed as mathematical formulas. But that is a condition. Either the surrounding or the gravity or our Earth or whatever condition we have. So without those conditions, they are not laws anymore. So this is a pretty important part. So I call them the relative truth. They are relative to the condition they have. They are tested, shown upon those facts. So it's called relative truth, relative to the condition. I want to make this point clear to you. All right, so this is a part of a relative truth. And so, but in philosophy, okay, now let's come to the third part. What is absolute truth? What do we mean by that? In philosophy, when we say truth, we can mean several things. But mostly when we say truth, it's something that is not conditional. Conditional truth, we call it truth. But normally we want it. What we want is an unconditional truth. In that sense, the absolute truth is something like a philosopher's stone. In my last words statement, when I put out there is an absolute truth but no God, I mentioned the two things. One is in development in chemistry, the other is the eternal, I forgot the term for that, power or something that's constant. People seek the constant power for that. So the two things, one is I forgot that term for that. But anyway, if you read my article, you can see the Chinese word. So we say 炼金术. The other is the 永动机. All right, and those are the ideas we share. All right. So in both of the development, people abandoned the original ideas of the concoction of the chemicals, try to make a stone turn to gold. They otherwise to seek eternal powers. It will run things forever without human interference, without human help. That's impossible. So people come out with the conclusion. For the first one, we developed modern chemistry. For the other one, we have the thermodynamics, the law of thermodynamics. So we have those two conclusions. We abandoned the previous thinking, basically. So the previous endeavors, all the trials, all the tests, basically stopped, dead, right? Then we come out with new things. So here's the thing. When you go under assumption from history, you can see either the behavior or the efforts, the original concepts will die, and something out of it will grow as a new results. That's a fact. So in philosophy, it's the same thing. But philosophy is different from other fields in that it is the guiding principles maker. It's a guiding purpose maker. So for people to accept the philosophical ideas, it will take a while. That's for sure. It won't as easy as a law discovered in science, like mathematics or physics or chemistry or biology. You can prove it right away. People can take it or forget it pretty fast. But in philosophy, it's a different case. So that's the unfortunate part for philosophers. But anyway, that's their destination, right? And they discovered something, they leave it there for other generations to appreciate. Till they die, the philosophers themselves die. Nobody or the market won't recognize that. This fact is pretty common. A lot of people even don't know who discovered this, and sometimes some of them even dig out by later generations. There's a guy I think in German called what's his name? Discovered by Bertrand Russell and God Love. What's his name? Suddenly off my tip of tongue. But anyway, the point is that a philosophical truth is buried more deeply and harder, more difficult to be appreciated by the masses, by the majority. That's for sure. That's basically a universal truth. All right. So for this part and the relative truth, I'll say, when we say philosophically what is absolute truth, we normally mean also without a condition. But there's a dilemma here, or paradox. If there's no condition or no prior requirement for the absolute truth, how about the language itself? How can you say that? How can you express it? Doesn't the language have the limitation? Does not language or expression in general have limitation to the truth you want to express? So here, philosophical truth or the absolute truth has a dilemma here. You can see it. That's why so many years passed since the last big philosopher or giant, if you would go that way, Heidegger on the continental part, Ludwig Wittgenstein, I think that's how his name is pronounced, in German probably, died like more than half a century ago. And there's no anybody major, right, except Derrida from France. But he's a destructionist, analyzing language. That's a small thing, or a branch of language following Wittgenstein on this part. All right, so here's the thing. When we seek in the past history, let me summarize this. In philosophy, we always aim to find unconditional truth. That is the philosopher's stone. This concept we can trace back to ancient Greek. And people, philosophers, trying to do that, trying to find out what is the fundamental truth. What is it? But they never realized or never perceived this far, that if that truth is the truth or is something, it must have a limit. The last limit is the language. Think about that. If you cannot express it, you can say it has no limit because you cannot even say it. If it can be expressed in language, then it must come under the holding of the language. It must have limitation given by the language itself. So make this point clear to you. All right. Okay. Now let's come to this part. What is what I call the absolutely absolute? This part. All right. Let me first remind you what's a philosopher's normal understanding of the absolute. The word absolute can be used not only as adjective, but also can be used as a noun. All right? And if I read from the internet, you can find the description pretty easily. It like this paragraph. A value. What is the truth? The truth is a value or principle that is regarded as universally valid, or that may be viewed without relation to other things. For example, good and evil are presented as absolutes. Pay attention here, plural forms, all right? So absolute is the value, all right? So if you go this way, as I mentioned before, there is something. The absolute is something people are seeking, like the stone, like a philosopher's stone is a stone. It's a gem or it's a crystal, it's a diamond. I don't care. It is something, right? But the very concept here, something is wrong. In that, because something, if can be expressed as it is, of course, otherwise how do you know it's wrong? Then it is expressed by the language, by the expression, which has in its own right the limit to the way you say it. So be careful with this part. This is a pretty hard part for most people to realize. Think about this way. How does a fish can know the water he is in? It's the same thing for humans. How can we know of something or some kind of a concept that is not a thing surrounding you? Well, you may say we can understand nothingness, nothing or nothingness. Let's say we don't have that kind of iPhone we don't have. So you have nothing of the iPhone. You don't have iPhone, right? But where did you get the idea of nothing? You get it from nothing of something. It's a missing of that thing which gave you the idea of nothing. So let me push it further. How about nothingness? The nothingness of everything. Can you say that? Well, you can say that, but think about that. That is very hard to perceive. What is the nothingness of everything? Like the German philosopher Leibniz once said, where there's something rather than nothing. Actually, this sentence is misconstrued. There's no nothingness of everything. You cannot say that because the word nothing from no thing, right? It comes from two parts. No means negative, missing of something. Thing is the thing. So missing something is not as nothingness. But the nothingness comes from the generalization of something or nothing. It is still based on the idea of something. The missing part, the concept of empty, the missing, is still coming from the concept of individual things missing. Correct? So if you understand this part, and we can go deeper into this. How to give you the idea what I call it, the absolutely absolute. Basically it's from this. When I do this, it's started from thinking. Think about your thoughts. Think about the function of your brain, if you will. Let me ask you this question. How does human have their first thought? How can your brain produce the first thought? How can that be? We know brain has the function of producing thoughts. And thoughts, more thoughts, complicated thoughts, connected thoughts, and we call it a system. If you get it logically correct, everything stringed together and put out in paper, write it down, they call it theory, right? Like an economic theory or a political theory or market theory, whatever you like it. But my question is, have you ever thought, how can you come with the first thought? You most likely you are not aware of your first thought because when you were very young, like a baby time probably, you have your first thought here. But how can that be? That's my question. The brain, now we know the medical part, we have analysis, we'll have anatomy. If you cut the brain open, no matter how detailed you can go, you can never ever find thoughts there. You can pick it out with the knife saying, well, this part is your thought. I can see one thought, two thoughts, three thoughts before we open your skull, right? You cannot say that. There is no thoughts in your brain. You can identify right there because thoughts are not matter. You can only discover the material part in your brain, but not the spiritual part. Descartes called it the spiritual matter. You cannot do that. So if they're spiritual, okay, how can you separate them into each unit? Well, first, you admit you have one thought for the second thought, third thought, right? They can be numerized one by one, correct? You have several thoughts about this idea, right? Let's say you go to a market conference and your manager asks you, what do you think about that? You can say, I have several thoughts I can offer, or ideas, you call it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can do it that way. All right. So here's the question. The brain has a function, previously has no thoughts. Agree? I think you do, because you have the time. When you were either in your mama's womb or in daddy's sperm, there is no thought. Do you agree? Then how did you have your first thought coming out of your brain? How can the brain produce a thought? Something material can have something immaterial. something with matter can come out with something without matter. How can that be? So that's the question. All right. So from this point, I can leave that part to you to ponder, and now go on with my theory. All right. From that thinking, I discovered this part. I call it absolutely absolute. That means it's go beyond something. It's not something. It's non-something. It's like you poke a hole in the balloon. The balloon you can regard as a Big Bang. Everything inside is a development. Whatever, the first one, the basic elements, the helium, the hydrogen, the oxygen, whatever follows. The first one, before that Big Bang, what is that? Or can we say, what is it? It is not it. It's not something. You have the idea. You have idea you can go beyond something, which is the inexpressible. That's not something. But that's not nothing, like in the world we face. Missing something, we call it nothing. So the concept is different. You can have the idea, but that idea is innumerable. It's inexpressible. So we basically use the language, use the expression to represent that idea. But that idea actually cannot be truthfully said to be a idea, because there's no limit. There's nothing there. Think about that one. You go out of the balloon. You poke a hole to the wall of the balloon, right? What is there? It's not something. It's not nothing. It's not nothingness. You cannot even say it's entirely dark, right? It's just like, let's come to your brain. If you dig deeper into your first thought, you're asking, how did the brain, the function, can produce the first thought? What's happening here? That is a mystery you need to understand. You need to see the whole part, the whole, well, let me use the word part. I don't, because the limit of expression of the language, I cannot even say that. But I try to pass the truth to you. You have to spread the truth by the use of language. That's the only means you can do it. You can draw a picture, you can play a tune, you cannot dance it out like bees, can you? No, you cannot. You have to say it. You have to use words. That's the only means by which you can deliver the idea, spread it to let other people understand you. That's the only way it is. So actually, this is the part of the most difficult in my book, in my system. I call it instinctology. Instinctology has two parts. One is instinctology, the study of copies or things or package of copies. The other one is called absolutology. That is study of the absolute. The absolutely absolute. But this is the most important part, because ontologically, in philosophy's term, you go beyond Heidegger, beyond the pure being, the pure existence, to use Kant's jargon, right? beyond something, beyond the expression, in Wittgenstein's words, beyond the language. What can you do? How do you express it? You still have to depend on the language to pass idea. But you know there is something there. I don't know what it is, but I know it's important. That's why I think probably the C Reader's editor feels this, and he put my words there, or statement there for other people to appreciate. All right, I thank him for that. And I know, hopefully, after my explanation, you can start to think about this. For myself, it took me a while to figure this one out. But I believe that's my major contribution in this theory. The other parts in psychology, I think that's true too. But somebody expressed it in simple terms, like Plato in the past, about using forms. But what I did for the psychology is more elaborate, systematic, more in content, more richer. It's richer, I feel. All right, okay, so hopefully my above talking make you a happy Christmas. And think about that. And if you have any response, I'll try to answer. All right. Any questions we can discuss. All right. Thank you so much for listening, for your time. Bye-bye.